I needed a more ambitious team, capable of exceeding higher performance targets, explained Mark, pushing the termination papers across the highly polished mahogany conference table. The firm was charting a new course. My name's Hugh Miller, 48 years old, with 11 years of experience as a senior account executive at Zenith Corporation in Springfield, Illinois. I devoted over a decade to cultivating a client portfolio that generated nearly 35% of the company's total revenue. No shortcuts. It was a testament to long hours, extensive travel, and relationships built on unwavering trust. I offered a polite smile, thanked him for the opportunity, and left without protest. Mark Jennings had arrived 8 months prior as the new vice president of sales, appointed by the CEO, Amelia Carter, to revitalize the sales team. He favored bespoke suits, delivered cliches masquerading as motivational speeches, and had never once joined me on a client call. 3 weeks into his tenure, he introduced a revised commission structure that reduced my earnings by 18%, despite my consistently outstanding performance. The warning signs had been subtle, yet undeniable. During recent office renovations, my desk was relegated to a remote corner. Invitations to important meetings mysteriously omitted my name. Yesterday, I'd noticed IT technicians attending to my computer during my lunch break. These seemingly insignificant occurrences, individually inconsequential, collectively signaled an impending change. I packed 11 years of work into a single cardboard box, family photographs, a coffee mug lovingly painted by my daughter, and a separate folder containing client contact information I'd kept apart from the company database. A matter of habit, really. Need a hand with that? Valerie from accounting asked, genuine confusion etched on her face. Are you changing offices? Something like that, I replied, avoiding any unnecessary drama. On the elevator descent, I found myself beside Everett Stone, our CEO. He offered a cursory nod, his attention completely absorbed by his phone. He was entirely oblivious to Mark's actions and their potential impact on quarterly projections, but he would learn soon enough. Walking to my car, I felt no anger, only a strange clarity, like awakening from a long, comfortable dream to find the house was never truly mine. The drive home was silent. No phone calls, no radio, just contemplation of the future. My phone vibrated as I pulled into my driveway. A text from Thomas Jenkins, my most significant client. The annual contract renewal was scheduled for next week. He proposed dinner reservations during his upcoming visit. He was still unaware of the developments, as was everyone else. I placed the phone on the kitchen counter, unanswered, and gazed out the window. 11 years of meticulously cultivated client relationships, built on my word and reliability, were at stake. Mark hadn't just dismissed an employee. He'd severed the vital link connecting Zenith to millions in revenue. And he seemed utterly unaware of the ramifications. I joined Zenith, then known as Heartland Financial Group, before the rebranding and the relocation to the swanky downtown offices. Everett had personally hired me, directly from a competitor where, despite consistent success in meeting targets, I'd been repeatedly overlooked for promotions. I need someone who truly understands this market, he'd said, someone clients trust implicitly. For 7 years, his trust was well placed. I expanded our client base from regional to national accounts, extending contracts from 1-year terms to 3 and 5 years. I secured Lockhart Industries, luring them away from our largest competitor, and added the prestigious Peterson Group when no one believed it was possible. My wife, Sarah, often joked that I was more devoted to my clients than to her. Thursday night dinner with the Millers again, she'd ask, already knowing the answer. The children grew accustomed to my absence from sporting events and recitals. Dad's working became their accepted reality. I'd promised it would all be worthwhile someday. 3 promotions, 2 office expansions, and 1 recession later, Zenith had evolved from a $6 million operation to a $40 million enterprise, with my accounts contributing approximately $15 million to that growth. Not that anyone had precisely calculated the percentage until Mark's arrival. The first red flag emerged during a quarterly review 3 months after Mark assumed leadership of sales. Your client acquisition rate has stagnated, he stated, gesturing towards a chart indicating that I'd only secured 2 new accounts that quarter. I'm prioritizing the expansion of existing relationships, I explained. The Lockhart contract just doubled. The future lies in new business, Mark insisted. We need hunters, not farmers. A week later, my executive assistant, Jessica, was reassigned. The following month, my travel requests required additional approvals. My expense reports were scrutinized with increasing skepticism, 1,000 tiny cuts. I began to overhear whispers about new talent being interviewed, young MBAs with aggressive sales pitches and zero industry experience. Mark called them disruptors. Last month, he hired Olivia Reed, 30 years old, from a tech startup. During her first week, she was assigned to accompany me on a call with Thomas Jenkins. No explanation, no formal introduction, merely a directive to learn the ropes. Thomas noticed. After the call, he texted, "Who's the new hire? Are you being replaced?" I dismissed it with a laugh, claiming it was simply team expansion. But on the drive home, a deep unease settled in my stomach, the intuitive certainty honed from years of interpreting boardrooms and client expressions. Something was profoundly wrong. I should have trusted that feeling sooner. I placed the cardboard box on the kitchen counter and poured myself a generous measure of bourbon. The house felt empty. Sarah was visiting her sister in Boston, assisting with a new baby. Perhaps it was for the best. I craved solitude. I retrieved my personal phone and scrolled through my contacts. 11 years of relationships, over 250 clients, vendors, and industry connections. People who trusted me to manage their businesses. People who chose Zenith because of me, not our corporate marketing or our opulent downtown office. My work phone, now inert in the box, contained only official communications. The dinner invitations, the golf outings, the personal cell numbers of CEOs and decision-makers, all resided on this personal device. Information I'd accumulated by being someone people genuinely wanted to work with. I took a sip of bourbon and felt a strange calm descend. No panic. No desperation over mortgage payments or health insurance. Just a clear understanding of what had transpired and what would follow. The bourbon burned going down. 11 years of 60-hour weeks, missed family dinners, and countless Little League games. 11 years of building something I believed was mine, only to discover it was not. I opened my laptop and reviewed my employment contract. The non-compete clause existed, but its scope was limited. 1 year, and only applicable if I left voluntarily. Termination altered the equation. There were no legal impediments to taking my clients elsewhere. My phone buzzed. Thomas again. Dinner reservation confirmed for Thursday. Looking forward to discussing the renewal. I stared at the message for a long time. Thomas Jenkins represented $2 million in annual business for Zenith. His company, Lockhart Industries, had been with me for 7 years. Before that, for years at my previous firm. Almost a decade of trust. And he wasn't alone. The Peterson Group, Willow Creek Properties, and Cambridge Industries. Collectively, they accounted for another $1.8 million. All had contract renewals pending within the next 30 days. All dealt exclusively through me. I set down my glass and made a decision. I wouldn't make any calls that night, send angry emails, or issue threats. I would sleep on it, wake up clear-headed, and then make precisely 3 phone calls. Not to vent or complain, but simply to inform my closest clients that my employment with Zenith was terminated, effective immediately. The rest would unfold naturally. I removed the family photos from the box, my daughter's graduation, my son's wedding, the Yellowstone trip we'd almost canceled due to a client emergency. I'd missed far too much already. Tomorrow, I would begin making different choices. I finished my bourbon and ascended to my bedroom in the empty house. For the first time in years, I didn't set an alarm. No early flights. No quarterly projections to review before dawn. Just the calm certainty that Mark Jennings had made a catastrophic error, and I needed to do nothing more than stand aside and watch it unravel. I made my 3 calls the next morning. No theatrics, just the facts. Thomas, I'm no longer with Zenith as of yesterday. I wanted you to hear it directly from me. His response was immediate. What happened? Who's handling our account now? Mark Jennings, probably. Or perhaps Olivia Reed. A long pause. That girl from the meeting? She doesn't understand our business. That's all I need to know. The decision is yours. Similar conversations ensued with Harold Peterson and Charles Cambridge. No recommendations, no recruitment pitches, simply information delivered with the same dependable reliability they'd come to expect. By noon, my personal phone was relentlessly buzzing. Other clients had received word. The industry was, after all, relatively small. At 2 p.m., Everett Stone called. I allowed it to go to voicemail. Darren, this is Everett. We need to discuss your departure. Several clients have expressed concerns. Please call me back immediately. I didn't. Instead, I drove downtown to meet with Arthur Davies, a lawyer specializing in employment law. I'd assisted his son with securing financing for a bakery 3 years ago. He owed me a favor. They can't prevent you from working, Arthur confirmed after reviewing my termination papers, but they'll attempt to dissuade your clients from following you. Be prepared for that. By 4 p.m., Zenith's legal department had emailed a reminder about confidentiality obligations. By 5 p.m., Mark had texted, "Let's discuss your severance package. There might be an opportunity for consulting work." Too late. My phone buzzed again at 5:30 p.m. "Thomas, just finished a call with your CEO and that VP who fired you. They promised continuity, said Olivia would handle everything personally. Then they offered a 10% discount on renewal." "What did you tell them?" I asked. "That I'd consider it." I said nothing. Thomas continued, "I've sent notice terminating our contract, citing a change in relationship management. Peterson and Cambridge had done the same." Still, I said nothing. "Darren, where are you going?" "Because wherever you land, that's where our business is going." That night, 3 more companies from my portfolio sent termination notices to Zenith. By morning, the total reached 10, representing over $3.9 million in contracts. Everett called an emergency board meeting. I knew because Jessica, my former assistant, texted me. "Complete chaos here. Mark's trying to blame you for client tampering. The CEO's questioning why no one saw this coming." My phone rang. An unfamiliar number. "Hugh Miller," I answered. "This is Richard Clayton, Clayton and Associates. A competitor, smaller firm, better reputation. I hear you're available, and several mutual contacts speak highly of you." "I'm listening." "Senior vice president position, a 6-figure signing bonus, full autonomy to manage your accounts, and a seat on our executive committee. When would you like to start?" "Tomorrow sounds good." I accepted immediately, not out of urgency or desperation, but because it was precisely what I wanted: respect, autonomy, and recognition of my value. That afternoon, Mark texted again. The board approved a retention package, full salary for 6 months, plus stock options. "Just help us transition your accounts." I didn't respond. There was nothing to say. They'd had 11 years to appreciate what I'd built. Now they were desperately trying to assign a price to it. Far too late and far too little. 1 week into my new role at Clayton and Associates, Jessica called from her personal number. "You need to know what happened," she said. It wasn't just Mark wanting his own people. I sat in my new corner office, larger than my previous one at Zenith, and listened as 11 years of history were reorganized into a clearer picture. They were planning to sell the firm, Jessica explained. Aegis Capital made an offer 2 months ago, but with conditions. They wanted to replace the account managers for the major clients, integrating them into their existing portfolio companies. The pieces fell into place. Mark hadn't been hired to increase sales. He'd been brought in to facilitate the transition of accounts away from me, transforming them into company assets rather than relationships tied to a single executive. My termination wasn't about performance. It was preparation for acquisition. "How do you know this?" I asked. "I'm still assigned to the executive suite. I see the documents, hear the conversations. Yesterday, they withdrew the offer. Aegis won't buy without the client base you built." After we hung up, I sat quietly for a long time. 11 years of loyalty, and they'd been willing to sever my connection to my clients as if I were a mere intermediary. Not because I'd failed, but because I'd succeeded too well. The relationships were too strong, too personal. They needed me gone before the clients could be repackaged as corporate assets. I opened my laptop and checked my email. More former clients had reached out. The industry buzzed with the news. Hugh Miller had joined Clayton, and his clients were following suit. Zenith stock had plummeted 15% in 5 days. My phone buzzed with a text from Everett. "Can we meet? Just you and me, no lawyers." I didn't reply immediately. The deeper betrayal settled in my stomach like cold lead. Not just fired, but deliberately sacrificed as part of a corporate power play. I picked up the phone and called Thomas Jenkins. "I need to ask you something," I said. "Did Zenith attempt to introduce you to anyone from Aegis Capital in the last few months?" A pause. "How did you know?" They brought in a fellow named David during our quarterly review. Said he was a strategic advisor, looking at our industry. Asked a lot of questions about our future needs. Confirmation. They'd been parading Aegis representatives in front of my clients, laying the groundwork for a smooth transition. All while I was still employed, still believing I was building something meaningful. Further calls revealed the same pattern. Behind my back, meetings were scheduled, information gathered, relationships probed for vulnerabilities or areas where I might be expendable. By the end of the day, I confirmed that at least 8 of my major accounts had been surreptitiously introduced to Aegis representatives, all under the guise of strategic advisors or industry consultants. I finally texted Everett back. No meeting necessary. I understand the Aegis situation completely. His response was swift. It was a business decision, Hugh. Nothing personal. But it was personal. 11 years of building relationships, of knowing clients' children's names and their vacation destinations, of answering calls on weekends and holidays, all reduced to an obstacle to a corporate transaction. I closed my laptop and gazed at the Springfield skyline from my new office. The view was different here, somehow clearer. Clayton had already secured contracts with 12 of my former clients, representing nearly $6 million in annual revenue. And more were on the way, not because I was actively recruiting them, but because, in this business, trust followed individuals, not logos or corporate strategies. Zenith hadn't just lost a salesman. They'd lost the very foundation upon which their growth had been built, and they still didn't fully comprehend why. 3 weeks after joining Clayton, I received an invitation to speak at the Heartland Financial Services Conference. The panel topic, Cultivating Client Loyalty in a Transactional Market. The irony wasn't lost on me. I accepted, not for ego or publicity, but because I knew who would be in the audience: industry peers, potential clients, and most importantly, Zenith's remaining leadership team. Everett never missed this conference. Neither did the board members. Meanwhile, Clayton had provided resources Zenith had never offered: 2 dedicated analysts, marketing support, and most significantly, equity partnership. Every client I brought in wasn't just commission. It was building something I partially owned. I spent a month preparing for the conference, not with flashy presentations or memorized anecdotes, but with data. Working nights with my analysts, I compiled performance metrics for every client who had transitioned from Zenith to Clayton. The results were irrefutable. Average service response time decreased by 48%. Implementation costs dropped 25%. Client satisfaction scores rose by 18 points. It wasn't just about me. It was about demonstrating what happened when companies prioritized relationships over transactions. The morning of the conference, I reviewed my notes one last time. No dramatic revelations, no public accusations, just facts and outcomes. Professional, measured, devastating. As I entered the hotel ballroom, I immediately spotted Everett, huddled with 2 board members near the coffee station. His expression tightened when he saw me. I nodded politely and continued on. The panel discussion began with standard questions about market trends and technological disruption. When my turn arrived, I spoke plainly about what clients truly valued. In an era of automation and digitization, personal accountability has become the scarcest commodity, I stated. Companies often mistake client relationships for company assets. They're not. They're trust agreements between individuals, requiring constant reinforcement. I presented my data without naming Zenith, offering case studies of clients who had switched firms and experienced immediate improvements. The lesson isn't about retention packages or contractual obligations, I concluded. It's about understanding that when you treat relationship managers as interchangeable components, clients will demonstrate how profoundly wrong that assumption is. During the Q&A, a young analyst I didn't recognize posed the question everyone was thinking. Isn't your recent move from Zenith to Clayton, along with several major clients, precisely the scenario companies fear when they consider how much autonomy to grant relationship managers? The room fell silent. I could feel Everett's gaze boring into me from across the room. That's a valid question, I replied. But consider the alternative. Zenith lost those clients not because I took them, but because they failed to grasp what those clients truly valued. No one followed me out of personal loyalty alone. They followed because their needs were consistently better met through my approach to service, an approach my former employer deemed no longer aligned with their strategic direction. I paused, making brief eye contact with Everett. Every company has the right to alter its course, and every client has the right to determine whether that new direction serves their interests. The market is brutally efficient in that regard. After the panel, 3 more former Zenith clients approached me. By the conference's end, Clayton had signed letters of intent with 6 new accounts, representing another $3 million in annual revenue. That evening, I checked the financial news. Zenith had announced a restructuring. Mark Jennings was pursuing other opportunities. The Aegis acquisition was officially dead. Their stock had fallen another 10%. I closed my laptop without a trace of satisfaction or triumph. Only the quiet certainty that comes from being unequivocally proven right by the market itself. The lesson had been delivered. Whether they would learn from it was no longer my concern. 6 months after my termination, I stood in Clayton's largest conference room, surrounded by my team and the company's leadership. On the screen behind me, a single slide displayed our quarterly results. $9.8 million in new business, 75% from former Zenith clients. Richard Clayton himself raised a glass. To the best acquisition we've ever made, and we didn't even have to purchase a company to obtain it. Polite laughter filled the room. I smiled but didn't participate. This wasn't a celebration for me. It was validation. My phone buzzed with a news alert. Zenith Corp announces CEO transition. Everett Stone steps down amid persistent revenue challenges. I slipped the phone back into my pocket without revealing it to anyone. Some victories don't require an audience. Later that afternoon, I received an email from Olivia Reed, the young woman Mark had attempted to position as my replacement. I've been let go, along with most of the sales team. Any chance Clayton is hiring? I forwarded it to HR with a note, worth interviewing. Not her fault what happened. As I left the office, my assistant handed me a couriered envelope. Inside was a handwritten note from Everett Stone. You were right. I prioritized transactions over relationships. It cost the company everything. If you're ever open to coffee, I'd appreciate the opportunity to apologize in person. I folded the note and placed it in my jacket pocket. Maybe someday. Not yet. That evening, driving home, I passed Zenith's building. The sign was being removed from the facade. The local business journal reported they were downsizing to a smaller office in the suburbs. I didn't slow down. Didn't take a photograph. Just drove on, eyes fixed on the future I was building on my own terms. 1 year to the day after Mark had pushed those termination papers across the conference table, I signed the final documents making me a full partner at Clayton & Associates. The firm had grown 38% since my arrival. My client portfolio now represented nearly $22 million in annual revenue. I closed the folder containing the partnership agreement and gazed out my office window at the Springfield skyline. The same buildings, the same city, but everything else had transformed. Sarah entered with 2 cups of coffee. Signed the official documents. I nodded. Sarah sat across from me, studying my face. You don't seem as happy as I expected. Just thinking, I said. About Zenith. She shook her head. About what you're building here. About doing it right this time. That morning, I'd approved the hiring of 4 new account managers, all with the same profit-sharing structure I'd negotiated for myself. No one would build something here only to have it taken away. That was my first act as a partner. My phone buzzed. Thomas Jenkins. Heard about the partnership. Congratulations. Knew you'd land on your feet. Thanks to clients like you. No, he corrected. Thanks to you being who you are. We simply followed the value. After we hung up, I picked up the frame Sarah had given me last Christmas, a simple quote on parchment paper. The best revenge is massive success. I placed it back on the credenza, face down. That chapter was closed. I opened my calendar and scheduled lunch with Everett Stone. Not to gloat, not to dwell on the past, but because sometimes the final step in moving forward is releasing the weight of what came before. I shut down my computer, grabbed my keys, and walked out to meet Sarah. We had tickets to our son's band performance, something I wouldn't have made time for in my previous life. Some losses clear the path for greater triumphs. Some fires consume what needs to be purged. I'd never been more certain of that than I was today.